Okay, let's go through and look at this packet of multiple choice questions in Module 1. So first we're going to look and see question 1 here. Which monomial is the greatest common factor? Remember, greatest common factor, I think about having good friends, and good friends have something in common. So when I look at the x's, what they have in common there is that they have 4 x's in common, so x to the 4th. And when we look at the y's, what they have in common there between the 8 and the 4 is that they have 4 in common there as well. So that makes my final answer B. On this second problem, we're looking at simplifying an expression. And they give you several lines of work and ask you to figure out where the error is. And so you can just look at the 4 answer choices that you have and let your answer choices help you figure out what is going on. And so when we look at this problem here, what is different is about having the cube root of numbers. We know if I have a square root of a number, as so in the denominator, that I go through and I have the exponents. So x to the 10th square root is x to the 5th, and y to the 4th square root is y squared. Because when we have a square root, that's like having like a little 2, I can't make it that small, nestled inside of that radical symbol. So if I have something to a power of 3, if you stop and you think about it, what times itself 3 times gives us x to the 6th? Well, it would have to be x squared. So the pattern is the same. We still divide, but we divide by 3 instead of dividing by 2. And so that's what gives us the correct answer for A. We check out this problem here about a local store selling different types of fruit drinks. And we know John buys D fruit drinks and pays a total of $36.53. And so what could be the value of that he buys? Okay, if we think about this, if we know he pays a total of that $36.53, if we take that $36.53 and divide it by 2, we're going to get roughly about 18.3. And if we take that $36.53 and divide it by 4, right, $4 a piece, that means the most you could buy then, it's getting roughly about 9.1-ish. So the only number that fits based on the 4 answer choices here would be answer C, because we have to be buying more than 9 but less than the 18. And so the only value that works out of the 4 answer choices is C. Okay, now when we look at this one here about a polynomial expression, and when we have this here, they want you to basically just go through and see, can you match these up? And be careful, we do have a minus sign inside of our parentheses there. So whenever we go through it and match these up, the 7x squared y minus 3x squared y gives us the 4x squared y. So right away, I can eliminate C and D. And so it comes down to looking at my other numbers. So when I look at this next one here, this minus 5x, right, it's a keep, change. So I have a negative 5x minus a 2x. Well, negative 5x minus 2x is going to give me a negative 7x. So right off the bat, after seeing that, I can see then that my final answer then is going to be B, because A has a different middle term. For our next problem, we have Caden wanted to go through and have exactly $600 in his bank account. And our goal is to be able to go through it and figure out basically how I can get exactly that $600. So we know he's going to be saving for 12 months, and he starts with $84. So if we think back to our sort of start and roll idea, we know he has a start of $84, and we're going to save for 12 months and the same amount of money for each amount of the months. Now, we did tell us about does not earn interest, which is good. We don't have to sort of account for any extra money in there if you think about interest. But the key here is that the same amount for each month. We're going for 12 months, and we want to equal exactly $600. And that's how we get A as our final answer. This problem's a classic problem about reviewing your properties. And so we have our first equation right here, and then we have Franklin going through and getting the second step here, and they haven't done any math yet. There's no balancing there. We just want to know, why is it okay? Which property justifies that step? And so if we go through any of these ones here, where it's the property of equalities, which is just A, means I would add to both sides, and I didn't do anything to both sides. I just simplified this left-hand side, and what allows me to go through and switch things around is your commutative property. Associative, remember, is about grouping, and we didn't have to worry about the identity. For this next problem, they give us a scenario, they give us an equation that goes with it, and they do tell us what the x and y are representing. So basically, we have to go through and see here that they are telling us that we have an ordered pair that is a solution. So we know that it works. You don't have to check it. And they just want to know, what does this solution represent in context of the situation? So if we go through and think about, well, what does my x start with? Well, my x is 225, right? So my x here is 225, and x is about selling that much amount in clothing. So if I go through and I look at my answer choices, the only one that sells $225 worth of clothing is either C or D. So I can eliminate A and B. So now between C and D, I have to go through and see which answer makes more sense. And we can see that Y is representing the total amount in dollars that he earns, not his commission, his total amount. So that's why C is a better choice than D. D just has it being as a commission, where C is his total amount of $176.25. Okay, this problem here is a little bit long in terms of reading this scenario and realizing that they gave us a graph showing solution, but the labels are missing. And when we're looking at this, they're asking, final answers, what does the point of intersection represent? So what does this guy right here, 4,3, actually mean about the school play tickets? So when we delve into this problem a little bit, we have Nikki going through and buying 3 adult tickets, so 3A plus 1 student ticket, and that's equaling $15. So if we think about what these labels then mean, is that A is my cost of my adult ticket, not just how many I bought. I know I bought 3. So these numbers here are all about the cost per those tickets, which then means that my variable, or my axes, right, my x and y axes, are also going to be about cost. So when I go through and see what my answer choice is then, I can see, well, my costs are going to be the same, right? Because Nikki and Emily are going to the same thing. So Nikki paying $3 for each ticket and Emily paying $4, and in option B, $4 and $3, like these two don't make sense because their prices aren't based on the tickets, based on whether they're buying adult or student tickets. So when we go through and look at this next answers, C and D, again, very similar to each other. So if we go through and try these numbers now, like if we just start with Nikki's equation and we go through and we try putting some numbers in, and let's start with C. If I put a 3 in for my A and I do 3 times 3 plus 1 times 4 and check my math, well, I'm going to get 9 plus 4. And does 9 plus 4 equal 15? No, that equals 13, right? So it can't be C because it doesn't work in the equation for even just Nikki. I didn't even have to check Emily's. D is the only one where it would work in both Nikki and Emily's equation. This problem's a great problem with a double inequality, right? The compound inequality. And they gave us some information about Ingrid's autographs. She starts with X. Then she doubles the amount of autographs in her collection. So just think about that. We start with X, and now we've doubled it. So 2 times X. Then she gets 3 randomly in the mail. Lucky her. And we know that she has between 85 and 90 autographs in her collection. And if you're not sure whether that means less than or less than or equal to, let's go over and look at our answer choices and see if any of these make sense. And when we look at our answer choices, basically we can eliminate A, B, and D just because they don't have the 2x plus 3. So whenever I look at C, it has to be C because it's the only one that satisfies the information about Ingrid. Okay, Rajiv unpacks one box that has 8 books in it, and he has 4 other boxes that each have X books in them. And he knows he has at least 80 books. They did the nice job of giving us this inequality. So they did the work for us. And they just want to know which graph best models all of the possible numbers of books. So if you go through it and think about what we could do with this, we just want to figure out, right, the model is solving like for X. So if we go through and solve this guy for our X, right, go through and do our balancing, we subtract 8 from both sides, so I get 4X is greater than or equal to 72. divide by 4. I get x is greater than or equal to 18 because I didn't multiply or divide both sides by a negative, so my symbol stays the same, and that matches this graph here at B. Hopefully this was an easy one for you after reviewing Hoy-Vux lines. So remember, with our x, this is a Vux line, meaning that it's going to be a vertical line and it's going to hit the x-axis at -2. So when I look at my x-axes for each of these, for the vertical line, it can't be A, it can't be B, but C and D are both possibilities. So I'm going to leave those. And heck, even if I go through and then think about this in terms of my Hoy line, right? Again, a horizontal line hits the y-axis. I still have C and D as my two options here. Now, if I go through and look at the symbols that I have, right? If I go through and look at the symbols that I have, there's my inequalities. I see that my x line, my vertical line, should be a solid line. Remember, greater than or equal to and less than or equal to would have solid lines where less than or greater than are going to be your dashed lines. So knowing that, now I know my vertical line has to be solid, and the only one that has that vertical line being solid and the horizontal line being dashed is answer choice D. This problem here has a lot to read and has a lot of context clues in it. But again, they did a lot of the work for us by setting up an equality system for us. So if we go piece by this, basically they tell us that Lar is buying water and lemonade, and they give us some restrictions. One of the most important clues here is that they tell us that each bottle of water is 20 ounces and each bottle of lemonade is 32. Because that's going to help us now go through and figure out what my x and y is. Because when I look at this equation right here, I see a 20x plus a 32y. So using my context clues that I highlighted there, that means x must be my water and y must be my lemonade. And so now I know that if I have a solution of the systems is 4180, so that means I'm going to have my x equals 40, which means my water bottles have to be 40. So when I go through and I look at my 4 answer choices, just with that little piece of information, A starts off with 40 bottles of lemonade. Can't be that. B's looking pretty good. C is talking about dollars spent on $40 spent on lemonade and $180 bottle of water, but this wasn't about money. The second equality was about money, but our x and y is clearly about how much of the water and lemonade I bought. So it can't be C or D as my answer choices there. And then this B would be your best answer.